Yeah, boy, it's July 21st, and this is episode 174, and this is a Fantasy Football Auctioneer podcast. The Fantasy Football Auctioneer podcast is the official podcast of thefantasyfootballauction.com, the internet's only website dedicated to all fantasy auctions. We've got a great little bonus episode for you today. We had a list of questions come in from one of our members, and Blister and I were sitting here. The mic was still hot after the Matt Harmon interview, so we thought, let's bang out another episode of the podcast for you. So this is a bonus episode with Blister and I. So Blister, what'd you think of the Matt Harmon interview?
That was awesome, man. And just so nice in this industry, I guess you could say, to be able to talk to a guy like Matt, who's got so much experience now and met so many people. And I mean, literally in the industry and in the NFL, to lend out a hand and share his expertise. That was a lot of fun.
That was pretty cool when he said, oh, you know, when I was talking to Deshaun Watson the other day, like, it's crazy that there's a guy that, you know, we're talking to that can say those things. So it was pretty cool. So
I feel like if we were those guys talking, we'd be like the guys on the league, you know, just inside information. How Olsen feeling this year? Or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So if you didn't hear that podcast, it's episode 173. It's on the website, thefantasyfootballauction.com. And you can access it there. Don't be afraid to give a rate and review, a little subscribe, and you'll get all of that stuff. If you're looking for special content, though, we do have the premium podcast available for our members on the site. Slim just posted a 5th premium podcast. This one was targeting $1 players. So he's done all the division breakdowns that way, and now has released more of a strategy pod on there. So we've got that. Blister's got all of his articles on there. We've got all of our auction values. So head on over to the website, thefantasyfootballauction.com, and check out the members area. So Blister, we're going to just go through some of these questions that SAE Lion sent to us, and we'll just kind of go through them in order there, if that sounds all right with you.
Yep.
All right. So if you guys are ready, then I'm ready. Let's cock the hammer. It's time for action. So like I said, we're going to do a little bonus episode here with Blister, and we're going to go through 4 different questions that SAE Lion, one of our members on the website, sent to us via email, which is footballauctioneer@gmail.com. So the first question, it's multi-step. Question number 1 has to do with auction draft strategies. Blister, so when it's your turn to nominate a player, do you always nominate a player you don't want?
No, not always. I think, you know, before I get too deep into this, I'm going to remind everybody probably now and at the end, if you do go to our website, thefantasyfootballauction.com, you're going to find a ton of articles in there that we've written on strategy over the years. And strategy, there's a lot of good strategy that you could have used 5 years ago that can still be applicable today. And I think the biggest thing we always talk about is being able to be flexible when you go to your draft and have different options available and different ideas available. But that's one of the fun things about auction drafting, is the fact that nomination is a big strategy in itself. And I like to see guys spend money. You know, when we used to have kickers or defenses in our leagues, you know, people would throw them out there early on for $1 and pretty much would get them because it was early in the auction. Nobody wanted to think about that at that point. I hated that because I wanted to see somebody spend $60 on a player I didn't want.
Right.
Anytime you spend money, then all of a sudden you have to start thinking and calculating, okay, that was a big chunk of my money. Now what am I going to do? So people start to get a little nervous. You might even get somebody nominated right after that they're still kind of reeling from the excitement that they just got a $65 player more. And so now they're kind of recalculating all their budget and their player strategy, and they might not even be ready for the next guy out there. So there's a lot of bonuses to getting people's money spent. So I do like to do that, but we've mentioned it several times over the pods, and the article is on the website. We have found over the years that there's something we call the auction U. And we did mention it a little bit in our pod with Matt Harmon. But if, for example, there's 8 running backs you might have in your top tier.
Sure.
The first couple of guys nominated out of that tier typically are going to go for a high dollar, like probably more expensive than the most.
Yeah.
And then as you get down into the 4th, 5th, 6th guys of those tiers, that tends to be the cheapest point. But then as there's only a couple guys left in that tier, they get pretty expensive again. So at the beginning, people are all excited to get one of those RB1s from that tier, and it gets expensive. After a couple go, they kind of figure, well, there's still 6 guys left. I don't need to spend 60 on this player or 58 or something. So they let a few of them go, and then all of a sudden, when there's only 2 left in that tier, they're panicking. Oh my God, there's only 2 more running back ones left. So they start spending a lot of money. So when it's your turn to nominate, and say you're the 6th nomination, and you look down and you're right in the middle of a tier, you might want to get a player out there at that point that you are interested in, because that might be the cheapest you're going to get them. If you let it go all the way around the whole round, then chances are all the rest of those players could be nominated. And if you're sitting on, let's say, Leonard Fournette, thinking he's pretty cheap, I should get him for 40 some bucks instead of 60. If he's the last guy in that tier, he's going to probably climb up to 55, 60. Yeah. So there are times when you do want to nominate players, but for the most part, I would say the majority of the rounds that you're nominating guys that you really don't care about and that are going to cost money. At the very end of your draft, when a lot of guys are down to $1, $2 players, that is a time again where you might want to nominate players that you want, obviously, because nobody can outbid them.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, no, and just I was looking at the actual numbers, Blister. If you were looking at that top tier, if you go from our consensus rankings from Gurley down to Fournette, let's say they're all in that from $47 up to $64. So if we lump them all together, you're 100% right that if at the back end of that Melvin Gordon could all of a sudden be going for 55 or 60 bucks because the drop off is pretty big to Christian McCaffrey or to Devontae Freeman or whatever it is. So that's a great point. And I think another part of that too, Blister, is who you're drafting with. If you're drafting live, if you're drafting online, but who you're drafting with too, I think is important, because if you've got some savvy auction guys in there, they all know you're putting out a guy that you don't want in the first few rounds of nominations. So there's where maybe all of a sudden you go opposite and you actually put someone out that you like because everyone else in the room thinks you hate them. And so having some, it depends. If you're with new auction guys, then they're going to be throwing out the kicker for $1 and the DST for $1 and do those types of things too. So knowing your crowd, I think, is also important to when you start listing guys that you do want.
Exactly, yeah. You get that. I mean, in our big auction draft, it's been pretty much the same dozen guys for a while, with the odd one guy moving out because we've got to go to a wedding or something. But brand new group of guys, or guys you might not even be sitting face to face to on the maybe doing the draft over the internet, then you got to be random.
Yeah, and I think it's one part of auction that is definitely overlooked at how important it is that nomination and the timing of the guys you put out, and when do you set the price point, and when do you go back to that tier, and those types of things. I think it's well overlooked. I think you just think, I just put out the second guy on my list as a nomination. There's much more to it.
Oh, exactly, and it gets deeper when you do know your league too, and you know that there's fans of a particular team, and some guys really want their Bears or their Dolphins or whatever the case may be. You can get them out there at the right time too.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh damn, I wanted that guy to wait for a while. Like, you put them out there, and then when everyone has lots of money, and that can really be a bonus to you too, because they could go for more than what they're worth.
The second part of the draft strategies question here, Blister, we'll call it the Zoobs question. When bidding on players, do you wait until the auctioneer counts down, 3, 2, 1, then bid last second just to screw over your other bidders? Is that something that you do, Blister?
No, I don't specifically try to do that. But again, if you know the crowd that you're with, right? Sometimes that just throws people off. That just pisses them off. Yeah. And they're like, they might think that they've got the player one because they've been bidding against say Uncle Buckets for a while, and all of a sudden I throw in a bid on going twice, and all of a sudden, what? No, you want this guy?
Yeah. You haven't been in at all. Yeah,
that happens. I think Slim will do that a lot. He'll think, well, that's too cheap. You can't go for that cheap. I'm going to throw a bid in on him. So sometimes that does throw people off. You got to be careful, especially getting later on in a draft, or if people are indulging in a few beverages.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden they think they bid or they wanted to bid and they didn't, then there can be a lot of confusion. And you just, if you got a good auctioneer, they're going to just say, nope, sold to this guy. And you kind of hurt yourself. But no, I don't typically do it, but there are some guys that definitely will.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another important piece to the auction is your bidding timing and how you do it. I think, and Slim's great for this, where he'll quickly bid up guys that he doesn't want to make it look like he wants them, or he'll sit and wait and throw out, you know, a last minute bid to pretend that, oh, you know what, maybe I want him at this point, even though he doesn't. So I think there's a lot of strategy to that too. And I think not being consistent with how you put in your bids keeps everybody else wondering if you actually want the guy or not. So that's something I try to do anyways, is sometimes I'll just be quick. 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll try to be that guy, or I'll be the last second guy too.
I think exactly. You got to switch it up.
Yeah. So there's no tell, I think, is important, right? So that about finishes question number 1. So Blister, let's move into question number.
There's a little part to that one.
Well, we kind of answered that though, didn't we? With the DST
the only thing I would change, like you mentioned, throwing out a defense or a kicker early or something like that, or in the auction. I'm not necessarily so much that is how much you bid. Like if you really want this year the Jags defense, don't start them at $1. Don't feel bad if you spend $2 or $3. But if you think it's going to take $3 to get the Jags defense and you really want them, then start at 3.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, I would say in our auction, for example, 9 or 10 out of the 12 guys aren't going to spend more than $1 on them. Now I do recall in the past when Seattle's defense was the one you wanted, they probably went for
now it'd be the Jags or whatever.
Now this year it'll be the Jags. So if you really want someone, no matter when you throw them out for what you're willing to spend on them. Yeah,
and then you can at least get it done, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's who you're drafting with too. And I think that in the more like that used to be a thing, right? Oh, throw your defense out early because then you can get them cheap because no one's thinking about it. But I think that's like if I could say, you know, so 2012, like you know what I mean? It's kind of the old school mentality now, because I think people are getting savvy to that type of thing.
There you go.
Okay, question number 2, Blister. He's a commissioner. He wants to put out the vote to get rid of kickers. Sell to his league, because he's going to make them all listen to this. Sell to their league why they should drop a kicker and add another flex.
Well, a lot of people don't respect the kicking position.
Yes. And as a former $9 Goskowski owner, Blister knows the value of a kicker.
Well, I think kickers are really so hard to gauge and judge as far as what they're going to do. Like, you don't know the game's flow, the game situation. I guess, I mean, you could almost argue that with any position.
Sure.
But kickers, there's not a lot of difference between kicker 1 and 2.
You're picking a guy at home in a dome.
Yeah.
And you're streaming them and you're dropping them.
And it's just kind of a waste, you know, versus if you could have another flex position and play, you know, I think you're quite a bit more excited when your flex player goes for a touchdown than kicker that you don't even know you probably have kicked a 35-yard field goal.
Like, or missed an extra point or whatever.
Yeah. You're not jumping around doing cartwheels when that happens. But when the flex guy that you put in goes off or does something, then that's, I guess, more gratifying. But I don't know if none of those arguments are really strong. I just think the kicker, the diversity isn't all that much. And there could be a kicker for Kansas City that goes off for 5 field goals, but how the hell do you know that, predict that? It's just more of a crapshoot. Yeah,
well, and I think it increases the level of skill if you add a flex. And someone and I talked about this the other night when we were talking with the episode, I think it was 172 or 171 or something, where it was called it No Kickers. Yeah. But drop the kicker and add a super flex.
Yeah.
And so if you want like strategy involved in your league and you want guys like to be in and be thinking and being able to construct a team how they want, I say, especially if it's going to be redraft, no one can say, oh, I didn't plan for an extra quarterback. Yeah. We did that this year to change things up, and we added multiple flexes to it, and it changes the whole way you draft. It changes the way you set your lineups. It changes everything. A kicker doesn't do that.
No.
Kicker, you put them out for $1 at the end of the thing, and there's no strategy in drafting a kicker, no strategy in how you play a kicker from week to week. So it actually makes your league less fun.
That's right. I agree. That's the best point I think you can make, is switch it to a super flex league. And all of a sudden, when there's 2 quarterbacks starting for a team, that well dries up pretty quick, especially in a 12-team league. A 14-team league, it makes it even more so. But there is a lot more strategy involved in when you're going to take quarterbacks. You're still, no matter if it's a 10 or 12 or 14 or a 16-team league, you're probably still not taking that kicker till the end or for $1.
Yeah. So that's how I would sell it, Mr. Lion, to your league. Okay, so let's move on to another question. It's about benches here. We're moving on to 4, Blister, because we pretty much have done. You said that we've already done 3 kind of when we talked to Harmon. So we'll move on to forcible bench strategy. So an interesting one. He's in a 14-team PPR auction keeper. He's got 5 bench spots. What are your thoughts, Blister, about carrying a second quarterback or a second tight end?
I probably wouldn't with only 5 bench spots.
Yeah.
Now, the trickier thing with the 14 team, there are going to be obviously a couple less quarterbacks and tight ends on the waiver wire.
Yes.
If I was drafting and the quarterback I took had a bye, say week 4, I might grab a quarterback so that come my bye week and only a month from now, I'm not really scrambling or hurting to do that.
Right.
But for the most part, I would only be loading up in wide receiver and running back depth. That's it. I don't want to have that because in a 14 team, that's what's going to catch you through. And there's, again, with quarterbacks and tight ends, you don't always have a big variance from one to another. Yeah,
I think the 2 positions, especially this year, have such a huge tier at that, let's call it tier 3 or something. You know what I mean? Where there's this big group from, of 10 to 12 guys that are interchangeable. So I would be, I mean, it's easy to stream off your waiver wire. Even a 14-teamer, if we look down on our rankings after 14, let's say a couple guys took a backup. So maybe you're at 19 or 20. Well, you still got Trubisky or Dak or Alex Smith, Case Keenum, Derek Carr, Eli. Like, you know what I mean? You still have those guys that you can stream in if, and the year that I won, it was streaming our big auction. It was streaming tight ends, and I picked up Nick Foles off the waiver wire, and he started 10 games. I started with Andy Dalton, wasn't afraid to dump him, and then picked up Andy Dalton for the playoffs because he had a better strength of schedule at that point.
So something to do when you're streaming and picking up guys is don't wait until the week before if you can. Like if I know in week 5 that I need a quarterback, then maybe I'll pick him up in week 3 if I don't already have one on my bench, and that way other guys can, because there are guys, if they're pretty savvy, that'll watch who needs what in which week and then think, I'm going to need this guy too. I'll put a little higher bid in on him. And all of a sudden in some leagues, you can't pick up a guy once the waivers close that one night. And all of a sudden you have a hole in your bench. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah. Pre-planning, that's savvy always. So yeah, I mean, I think if Slim was here too, he'd have the same answer. Especially with only 5 bench spots, you want upside guys on there that in any given week you're going to say, hey, you know what, he might be my flex this week. Having a second quarterback, I mean, isn't giving you that upside, right? But if you're holding on your bench a Treat Cohen or something like that, all of a sudden you're like, oh, you've got this value. I wouldn't be storing handcuffs, and I wouldn't be storing those onesie positions on a five-man bench.
That's a short bench.
Pretty short. And seeing as you're going to add a super flex to it now, Lion, right? You're going to add that super flex. Maybe now you're going to also think about expanding your bench spot so you can house a third quarterback. And then now all of a sudden you might need to. It changes the whole dynamic of things.
And as a commissioner, that might be a good idea, is to vote to maybe increase the bench spots.
Yeah.
I think if you're listening to podcasts right now and prepping, it'll only be advantage to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll have more names that you could put on there. Makes it a little more interesting.
All right. So question number 5 here for SAE Lion. He's asking about league trade rules. And in redrafts, we don't play in a lot of leagues that have trades, but we can speak to it here. So in his main league, he says we don't have a trade. We haven't had a trade in over 3 years because we have, quote unquote, some salty bastards that don't want anyone to gain an advantage. So they do vote. They do have a league voting procedure where they have the majority, but he's trying to change it as a commissioner, Blisters, to say so that the commissioner can say if the trade is valid or not. So he just feels that the league is missing out on a big portion of fantasy football experience, never having trades. So again, is there any convincing reason to have the majority vote on a trade, or can the commissioner veto? Just looking at trade rules, Blister.
Well, basically, do you have to vote to go from a majority vote to commissioner?
Yeah.
Might be screwed if you do. But I don't know. I think if you just explain that, saying fantasy football trading is important. Like I always worry in some trade leagues, if you don't know everybody, I guess even if you do know people, that someone's going to make a back alley deal and say, hey, I'm going to trade you these guys.
Yeah.
You cut me in on pieces of pie if you win or something.
Yeah. Collusion.
You got to watch the collusion, right? And I guess if you were a commissioner voting or had the power, And maybe if you had like a assistant or a deputy or something that would you kind of bounce it off of me. I think I want to improve this trade, and this is why. And if the other guy says, "Oh, that doesn't look good," or "No, you better not," or, "Yeah, what the hell?" Then you kind of go from there. At least it's not, and everyone, because what could happen is if everyone is sour or mad that you approved this trade, didn't approve that trade, then you're going to have league mates that are going to say, "Oh, I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm not find somebody else to take my spot." And that's tough. It's a tough spot. You don't want to put yourself in that position, but you do. I understand how you want to make the league a little more lively. So
yeah, well, and I don't think I don't like the idea of a league voting on it. Like I just like if two guys want to make a trade and one guy's winning the trade, I don't think that it should be on the rest of the league to tell that guy he lost the trade, and so therefore we should vote it out. But I think the commissioner has to have veto for the collusion.
Especially, he should.
Yeah,
but I mean, what you value and what I value could be totally different.
Yeah,
right. I might, especially in a dynasty league or whatever else. I mean, you might be looking at the future, or somebody else could be looking at right now, or maybe I'm giving you a wide receiver 2 for an RB1 or something, but I have plenty of RB1 and I need somebody better at wide receiver. So it might not. You don't have to win every trade. You know, you're trying to make your team better now or in the future, depending if it's a 1-year league or whatever. But it doesn't mean you have to have exactly equal value.
Right. And this is a PPR. I'm thinking it's PPR auction keeper. So then I would think that also to increase trades, hopefully is allowing for draft picks to be traded, because that adds to some of the fun and the element too, right? So that if somebody's down and out, they can be making moves to maybe move up in draft picks and stuff for the next year. So that might be a way of increasing the occurrence of trades in the league too. I don't know, trying to add that element to it.
We've had a couple leagues where I've switched, like the one we do with our ECL guys, that I switched to auction online. We have trades, but there wasn't a hell of a lot of trades done in the last year. I mean, not that because they're salty or anything like that, just that I don't know if people forgot about that league or what.
And in redraft, I don't like it all that much because like you draft your team, that's your team. You work the waiver wire and away you go. I think in the keeper and the dynasty world, that's where trades are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So instead of answering the questions via email back to them, which we do, if you email us at footballauctioneer@gmail.com, we get these all the time. We get lengthy questions, and Slim and Blister will send out responses to them real quick. So we just thought that this was an interesting set of questions that one of our members had, and why not throw it out as a bonus episode? So we've thrown it out there. Hopefully we answered all of your questions, Mr. SEA Lion. And if you have any more, make sure you fire it that way. You can also ask us questions on Twitter. We are at Fantasy Auction. Again, the guys are answering questions there all of the time. And it's a good follow right now. I love some of the stuff that Slim's doing with the Fantasy Auction handle right now, where it's like, which player do you like at this price point, or what start do you like, and doing some of those things. Because I think they're kind of questions that everybody is thinking right now as they're doing some prep. Do I go RB heavy? Do I go receiver heavy? And so it's good to see what the masses think about that. You get 500 people voting on which way you should start or how much money you should spend on a guy. It's pretty good in your auction prep. It's kind of like doing a little mini mock there, you know what I mean, just by following that handle. So on that note too, if you are doing mocks, make sure you send us your results. So if you just forward your results to us at auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. We'll put your name into the hat for a draw of a free membership. So we've given Nick one this week, and next week on the podcast we'll give out another one. So just forward your league results, your draft results to us. The email again is auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. Every time you submit the results, we'll put your name in the hat. So if you send us 10 mocks, we'll put you in 10 times. The responses have been great, and it's been really helping us give you the most accurate, up-to-date, relevant auction values rather than just some sort of algorithm that is based on a snake draft. So keep sending those in. That is auctionmockdraft@gmail.com. Blister, anything else you want to add to this bonus episode today? Short but sweet.
No, I'm glad we got to bang that one out, and now we got just a couple more sleeps till we can be on our road trip.
Oh, I'm pretty excited. I'm excited about the best ball draft we're going to do down there. I think it's a great way of spending one of the nights. And And for some of the guys that don't necessarily play fantasy, best ball is the right way to do it. They don't have to waiver. They don't have to set a lineup. So it's going to be deep benches, though. Deep for these boys.
It would have been nice to do an auction. Obviously, that's
obviously.
Forte, but it wouldn't have been too fair, I don't think, to most of the guys.
And they probably would have said no.
Yeah, and it would have taken a lot of time, and nobody would have, after 4 hours of golf, I don't think they would have wanted to do a 4-hour auction. So
yeah, that's right.
This will be fun and easy, and
quick and painless, and it'll be good to go. All right, Blister. Well, I guess I'll, like I said the last time, I'll see you on the road early Monday morning. And for the rest of you, I'll see you when it's springtime in the Rockies.